All right, folks, 420 week is upon us, and that means that either you yourself are going to experience this, or you might be the one who facilitates someone else experiencing an edible high that might be a bit much. Like the kind where you're hanging onto a Starlink satellite talking to Jesus kind of high. And I've been that high, and it's really not that enjoyable. And we want y'all to have a really fun and safe 420. So in this video, I'm going to talk about edible best practices and the things you can do to make sure that you stay somewhat close to the ground. The first thing that's important to understand is that all THC is not created equal. So when you inhale cannabis, whether that be from a bong, a bowl, a joint, a bubbler, you dab it, or it's from a vape pen, what happens is you're primarily consuming Delta-9 THC and a small amount of 11-hydroxy THC, which is basically Delta-9 that gets converted into this other compound by enzymes in your lungs and your liver. But when you swallow THC, as in with an edible, your liver converts a lot more of that Delta-9 into 11-hydroxy THC. And 11-hydroxy THC is significantly more potent than Delta-9. And because you're eating it, it has to go through your digestive system, get metabolized by the liver. It takes anywhere from an hour to 2 hours for most people to experience any bit of effects from an edible. So understanding that the inhalation of THC is different than the digestion of THC is the very first thing you have to understand, because you could have a really high tolerance to smoking cannabis or vaporizing cannabis and then just be totally floored by too high of a dose when it's consumed as an edible. So the number one thing when it comes to edibles and having a good experience, especially if you're new to edibles, is making sure you have the right dose. So obviously the right dose is going to vary based on your tolerance, but we have a guide. It's pretty simple, which is you want to have anywhere from 2.5 to 5 milligrams of Delta-9 THC max within a 24-hour period. Now, I know some of you are just thinking, oh, that's nothing, you're not going to feel a damn thing. Well, that may be the case for you if you have a tolerance, and it may be the case for some people who have no tolerance, but for the most part, small amounts of THC for people without any bit of tolerance as a whole, let alone an edible tolerance, as low as 2.5 to 5 milligrams is enough to feel a significant effect from THC. The big thing here is making sure that you only have that within a 24-hour period. And the reason why is some people can experience this sneaker effect, okay? Like not sneaker, like creep up effect of that metabolism of THC, where they might not feel it for a couple of hours. It could be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours in, and all of a sudden, bam, someone's high. So 2.5 to 5 milligrams of THC max within a 24-hour period. If you don't feel anything, the next time you dose, take 2.5 milligrams more than you did the previous day. So if you took 2.5, take 5. If you took 5, take 7.5. Next thing it's really important to understand is that size does not matter. I could make a brownie with 1,000 milligrams of THC. I could also make that exact same size, shape, and weight of a brownie, only have 5 milligrams of THC. So if you're ever in a situation where someone's gonna give you an edible and you're like, I don't know how much to take, and they say, oh, well, just break it in half, that means nothing. What matters is the amount of THC in milligrams that you get in your system within a single serving. The next thing that's important to understand is that if something says there's a 10 milligram dose, and you only want to take 5, it doesn't mean that if you cut that in half that you're going to get exactly half that dose. You see, a lot of edible products are not 100% homogenized. It depends on the type of edible you're getting. A lot of gummies and mints and things like that that come in a packet where they say 1 piece is 1 serving are accurately dosed, but sometimes you get things like a bag of popcorn or beef jerky or your friend's homemade brownies that are not properly homogenized, so you have no idea if you break it down into portions what the dose will be. So if you are doing an edible for the first time, I would highly recommend, if it's homemade, you're getting it from someone like a cannabis chef or just an OG that really knows what they're doing with their homogenization of their cannabinoids in their base ingredients before it's all made in brownies and chocolate and yummy and all that good stuff. Or get something from a dispensary that is specifically a single serve product and it's coming from a brand that's been around for a while. And if you're not sure what that is like, just ask the bud tender. I promise you they're gonna know the best ones to go with. Okay, so what happens if you do get too high? Well, the reality is that you just gotta wait it out. I know there's a bunch of different claims and myths and pills and little DIY hacks that people say that they can get rid of your high. It's really not the case. Primarily what happens is that if you do get too high and you try one of these other things, that the distraction of that from you being too high is primarily what's going to help you. However, a lot of people say that you can just take some CBD and your high will completely disappear because CBD counteracts the effects of THC. Well, there is some truth to that, but it depends on when you take the CBD. Based off of research, you have to take CBD before or at the same time as THC if you want to lessen the high. Now, this doesn't mean that you won't get high at all. It just means that you won't get as high. And generally speaking, CBD tends to lessen some of the paranoia and anxiety that comes from getting too high. So if you want to minimize the effects of THC without getting rid of all the fun stuff, then definitely take CBD before, say an hour or so before your edible, or at the same time. And you need a decent amount. I would recommend taking at least 100 milligrams since you're consuming THC at the same time. Now, if you weren't consuming THC, you need a lot more CBD than that, but it's a good starting point to just, take a 100 milligram gummy or 100 or 200 milligram tincture at the same time as your THC dose, and that will hopefully minimize some of the negative effects that some people can experience. I'm not trying to be like some negative Nancy and scare people about THC and getting too high, but the reality is it happens, and it does happen to a lot of people. And some people are like, no big deal, that sucked, I'll get over it, and then they get high again and all as well. Well, some people have really bad experiences, and that's not good, because if they don't try it again, or they talk about those negative experiences in a way that makes it seem like the weed was the problem versus the knowledge and the education behind dosing, then it just gives everything a bad rep. So whether you're eating an edible for the first time or sharing that experience with a friend, I would definitely recommend you follow these simple best practices to ensure that you and they have an awesome time with their first edible. And there you have it, folks. Have an awesome 420, stay safe, have fun, and enjoy your high.